Welcome to section 1.6. We are going to continue looking at graphs and charts, but dive a little bit deeper into some other things we can do. This first video, we're going to take a look at ways of making editorial changes to Excel files, Excel graphs, fine-tuning the graphs and charts in Excel. So let's start by looking at the obesity rate versus poverty rate graph. So this was the graph we made a few videos ago in section 1.5, and there's a couple things I don't like about this graph. The graph itself is fine. I don't like the title, and I'd like to know which axis is which. So to change the title, I'm going to click on the title, click again to get your cursor in there, and now we can just type away. So I'm going to make this obesity rate versus poverty rate by county, by Michigan County. Remember that each dot here represents a county, and we have the poverty rate and the obesity rate in for the variables. The horizontal axis is the obesity rate, the vertical axis is the poverty rate. So the other thing I mentioned I don't like about this graph is that I don't know which is which. I actually just told you that the horizontal axis was the obesity rate and the vertical axis was the poverty rate. Here's how we can fix this, as well as make a large number of other changes. This little plus sign in the upper right-hand corner allows you to make changes to all kinds of chart elements. So if you click it, you can do things with the axes. So I can get rid of the axes. I don't want to do that. Click on the little arrow and you can see other things you can do. Primary horizontal, you can get rid of the vertical, and so on and so forth. You can play with the chart title, data labels. That's not good for this graph. Error bars works if you've got some statistical data. Grid lines, you can play with where the grid lines look. You can put in a legend if it's not there. You can add a trend line. So there's lots of stuff you can do in the plus sign. Most of these, as you can see, don't add any value to this graph. But in this case, the one thing I didn't like was the axis titles. So I'm going to click. The arrow allows you to play around with the vertical and the horizontal. Now that there's space for them, all you have to do is click inside, once to highlight, to select the title, once more to put your cursor in, and now I can type in what the horizontal represents and what the vertical represents. This one's a little bit weird because you're going to be typing vertically, so it just takes a little getting used to. And there we have it. This is a much better graph. This tells the reader everything they need to know. I want to show you one more example with the pie chart that addresses some of the weaknesses that pie charts have. So we're back to my Duolingo frequency chart. I actually don't, there's some things I like about this chart and some things I don't. Because of the way we highlighted things, we've got our legend here as well. But I don't like the title. I would say, I don't know, I'm just going to call this Victor's Words on Duolingo. Russian words, let's be more specific. So you see I just clicked on the title to select it, clicked again to get my cursor in there, and then just went ahead and typed. Now, if you look at this graph, you can see the reader can make an inference that these are categories for how well I'm doing with various words. And then you can tell from the pie chart the relative significance of the relative number of words, the relative portion of the number of words in each category, the relative frequencies. Now, here's the problem. Right? You can kind of make an ballpark estimate that if you look at this blue portion, it looks a bit over 75%, so maybe 80%. Sure enough, 80.8%. This looks like about an eighth, so maybe 12.5%. pretty close. And then these two are a little bit harder to tell. But that's kind of difficult to tell. And now maybe you don't care about the precision. Maybe this tells enough to the reader uh, on its own. But if you care a little bit more about specifics and you're using a pie chart, it's really helpful to label the values, that use data labels. Now, in this case, we've got specific values. We can play around with this a little bit in terms of where they go. So I'm going to select them first. Oops. And go to the arrow, and this is where to put them. And you can see that doesn't look so great. That doesn't look so great. That looks a little bit better. That's a little awkward because it's not consistent. That looks nice, but things are overlapping. Right? And then there's some more options you can play with. So the one I like the best is the one where they're outside, but it's not necessarily clear which goes to which. So I'm going to use the data call out because that will connect the data directly to the graph. And notice it's giving us these percentages. If we're using a pie chart, particularly, the relative frequencies are probably what's more important than the raw frequencies. For the raw frequencies, we would use a bar chart. But take a look at this. You can drag, oops, I didn't do a very good job of that, but you can drag your call outs around so they don't overlap. Right, see, I just moved that there. And you can actually edit them if you want. So I dragged pretty good a little bit. I'm going to drag time to practice a little bit. And now it's a little bit clearer. Right? So the bottom line, what I'd like you to take away from this video is that you can change titles by double clicking on to select where the title is, and then double clicking to put your cursor in and then typing. And you can make a lot of changes to the chart elements by playing around with this plus symbol. In the next video, we're going to look at a different kind of change to a graph that changes the scale of an axis in a way that sometimes helps make a graph clearer.